fatigue duty and guard duty, also firing off salute shots. I am currently dressed as a civilian who have been here. Lots of different women lived here at the fort, and there was also a pretty steady population of tourists by this time. So Mackinac Island in the 1880s was a very peaceful tourist destination. They actually ran the Mackinac National Park out of the fort from about 1875 to 1895 before it became a state park like we know it as today. And despite the fact that the garrison here was tasked with running that national park, it also was an active military post, so they would have been expected to do things that posts across the country were doing. And one of those things that they're doing every day would have been firing off salute shots. So a salute shot would have been fired here at the fort every morning at reveille and every night at retreat to mark that start and end of a workday. They also could have been firing off salute shots for holidays, so think 4th of July and Decoration Day, which is their Memorial Day. They also could have fired off salute shots to honor important events in our nation's history. When President Ulysses S. Grant passed in 1885, they fired this cannon off 13 times in the morning, once every half an hour throughout the day, and then an additional 38 times at night. So they fired this thing off a lot. Any guesses why they would fire 38 times?
38th president?
I don't know if I heard it. There would have been, what? So there were 38 states in the U.S. at that time. So that's why we have a 38 gun salute. As for what a salute shot is, it's essentially a flag. So unfortunately for you folks, we're not actually going to be lobbing 6-pound cannonballs at Shepler's Ferries. While that might get interesting, that's not what they were doing anyway with the salute shot. Instead, it is just black powder. Today we're using about 5 ounces of black powder wrapped in aluminum foil. Now historically they would have used muslin, but that gets a little warm and might create some ashes, so we're using what is safest today. Historically they could have fired anywhere from 10 to 12 ounces of black powder, and if there was an actual cannonball they could have used near 20 ounces. Now as for the gun that we're firing today, this is a model 1841 6-pound smoothbore field gun. You might be thinking to yourself, that's a bit outdated if that's what they had here in the 1880s, but like I mentioned before, Mackinac Island was very peaceful. The garrison here really didn't need the latest artillery pieces. They really only needed something that goes boom, and this gun worked perfect for them. As for the range of the gun, if we were actually firing something, it'd be about a maximum of about a mile, so kind of out to the shores of Round Island out there. Where that bow would land though, it's pretty uncertain. It's pretty inaccurate at that full mile range. If we want a more accurate shot, we'd be looking at more of a half-mile distance. So thanks out to that break wall out there, and that is because the inside of the gun is a smooth bore, so essentially it doesn't have the rifling that will give it a more accurate shot at a longer distance. Now that I give you a little bit of background, we can actually get into the loading process. Now the process that we're doing today is very similar to what they would have been doing had they actually been loading a cannonball, just minus the cannonball. So the first command that will start this all off is load. This is telling everyone to get into position. You can see at the end, Maverick is covering the end of the gun. He's covering the touch hole with his thumb. This is called thumb stalling. On the other end of the gun, Christian has dipped a wool sponge into water and is inserted it into the barrel. He's introducing moisture into the barrel. Now the command of sponge will tell Christian to pull that sponge out, and you might hear a little bit of a thunk. The thunk that you just heard was the vacuum that they just created by plugging both ends of the gun collapsing. So essentially by creating that vacuum, you're depriving the inside of the barrel of any oxygen and making it safe to load our charge, just to make sure that any previous charges or embers from anything previously would be extinguished. The next command of ram will tell Christian that he's going to push the charge all the way down to the end of the gun. So the charge is now going to be sitting right underneath where Maverick's thumb is. Now they can get ready, so they'll step away from the gun and move it into the firing position. So they're going to be pushing it up along that wall. Now that they've moved it into firing position, they can get it ready to be primed. So what a Maverick has done now is pulled out a large brass spike known as a gunner's pick. He's going to be inserting this into the touch hole and opening up the charge, essentially making contact with it so that our primer can actually do its job. The primer that we're using today is called a friction primer. A pretty nice technology for the 1840s, so I know you're all excited, but it's going to be a metal tube that's full of gunpowder. At the top, there is a highly friction-sensitive chemical known as fulminated mercury, and what's going to happen is when we pull the rope, it's going to create friction and sparks, eventually setting a jet of flame down the barrel of the gun and giving us the boom that we're all here for. Now this is my time to remind you folks that this is a cannon, so I do in fact encourage you to plug your ears. With that, we've only got one more command left, and that's ready. Fire!
Jeez.